We milk 2,400 cows, practically within 6.5 hours of milking. Today, we are producing around 100,000 liters of milk, with an average yield of 43 liters per cow per day. We are expected to surpass 36 to 37 million liters produced here at Colorado. Our goal is to maintain a daily average above 100,000 liters throughout the year. Here at Colorado Farm, as you can see, our entire cow cooling system operates under cross-ventilation. With approximately 2,400 cows in lactation, we expect to reach up to 115,000 liters of milk at peak production.
Previously, we used to feed them 3 times a day. Today, these high production groups are being fed 6 times a day.
Then, we release a large wave of water, approximately 15 to 20 centimeters deep. This wave washes the flooring, leaving it extremely clean and dry.
The main crop harvest will be completed around April 15th, after which we will start planning for the second harvest. I am working on compacting the silage with a high-quality cover to ensure excellent results. The goal is to keep the margin of error at 2 to 3%, with 2% being considered ideal. I always say I have the best team in the world, because we are achieving an accuracy rate of around 99.8 to 99.7%.
Today, we are bottling around 50 to 60,000 liters of milk. Bottled.
Jesse sent a message saying that he won't be making videos anymore because you haven't subscribed to the Santa Fe channel. So subscribe now, and he will continue recording on farms around the world.
Welcome everyone to the Santa Fe Agro Institute's channel here on YouTube. Today I am at Colorado Farm with Sergio, who is the farm director, and also with Gustavo, the feeding coordinator. In this video, we will present all the internal processes of the company, as well as the dairy plant operations. I hope you all enjoy this video.
Well, we are here at Colorado Farm, located in Araras, Sao Paulo, under the Shando milk brand. We are currently inside the milking parlor, which operates as a rotary system with 72 stalls. We milk 2,400 cows, essentially within 6.5 hours. Currently, our milk production is around 100,000 liters per day, averaging 43 liters per cow per day. We operate with 5 workers per shift, and these workers are divided according to function. Some are responsible for bringing the animal groups to the parlor and performing the pre-dipping. Another individual dries and prepares the teats to receive the milking unit. This is the second operator on the carousel. So, one performs the pre-dipping, another is responsible for drying the teats, a third places the milking cluster, and as the cows are being milked, and you will see the carousel in motion, we have a final operator at the end of the rotation who checks the completion of the milking and applies the post-dipping. All the milk from these 2,400 cows is sent to our dairy plant, which is located right next door. We produce under our own brand. This is a bit of our routine here in the rotary milking parlor, which is adjacent to our dairy plant. And as for how we conduct our training sessions here, we hold weekly meetings and monthly meetings with our team. The team is coordinated by Matthias, managed by Morivaldo, and overseen by Nato, our general manager, who will be speaking with you later. During these meetings, we present data and performance indicators so that everyone can clearly understand how operations are progressing in the milking parlor. Whether it's the milking speed, which is currently at approximately 430 cows per hour, or the milk quality, mastitis rates, somatic cell counts, the teat condition of our cows, or the maintenance procedures we have implemented. At Colorado, we work intensely to ensure that all individuals are in direct contact with the facts and realities within the milking parlor. This approach aims to engage the team, ensuring that everyone knows precisely what is happening in their respective area and is capable of delivering consistent results. One of the biggest challenges in a milking parlor is to maintain standardized routines across all 3 milking shifts. That is, to have well-aligned teams ensuring that the final output does not vary significantly between the morning, afternoon, or night shifts. I hadn't mentioned it before, but we milk the cows 3 times a day. The first milking starts at 5 in the morning, the second at 1 in the afternoon, that is 1,300 hours, and the third at 9 o'clock at night, or 2,100 hours. We observe very minimal variation in milk yield between shifts. This consistency is the result of thorough training and preparation, which ensures the team is as homogeneous as possible. Our goal is to avoid any major discrepancies, because if there is one thing cows like, it is routine. And a well-executed routine can only be achieved through well-trained, engaged, and motivated personnel. Therefore, our meetings, training sessions, and performance reviews play a fundamental role in enabling the team to deliver on such a demanding task, the operation of the milking parlor. We are currently milking approximately 410 cows per hour. These are the months with a high number of calvings. Therefore, average production tends to be slightly lower. This is the case in January, February, March, and April. That said, we are extremely pleased with this year's performance. If we look at April with an average slightly above 43 liters per cow, it indicates that we are on track to build the best production year in Colorado's history. January, February, and March have already set historical records for us. Thus, we are confident that we have all the conditions in place to achieve an outstanding 2025, with the contribution of nutrition, management, reproduction, and herd leadership. I truly believe that in this year of 2025, we are undoubtedly building toward the highest average milk yield and greatest milk volume in our history. We are expected to surpass 36 to 37 million liters produced here at Colorado. And if everything goes as planned, we will maintain an annual average production of over 100,000 liters per day, which last year we nearly achieved but did not fully reach. This is the trajectory we are mapping out for 2025. Here at Colorado Farm, as you can see, our entire cow cooling system is based on cross-ventilation. It functions like a giant radiator. A paper-based cooling pad is moistened by descending water, while on the opposite side, exhaust fans pull the air through this honeycomb-like structure. As the air passes through the wet surface, it causes evaporative cooling, and cooler air enters the barn environment. This is part of the strategy we are implementing here at Colorado Farm to improve thermal comfort for our animals. It is not a perfect system. It is not an air conditioner, as it is still influenced by relative humidity. The drier the air, the more efficient the system becomes. During August and September, which are typically the driest months in our region, the system reaches its peak performance. Under these conditions, we can achieve up to 13 degrees Celsius difference between the external and internal barn temperatures. In this regard, relative humidity is the determining factor for system efficiency. Now, let's move on so we can see where the cows are housed. That will give us a better understanding of how the system works in practice. Shall we? Here we are accompanying our colleague Flavio, a veterinarian who works with us in Embryo collection. These are the top genetically ranked animals in Colorado's herd, selected and prepared to serve as embryo donors. We aim to produce as many female embryos as possible, which are then implanted into our own cows. Colorado exclusively uses recipient cows from its own Holstein herd. Every 21 days we collect embryos from approximately 12 to 15 cows and 12 to 15 heifers, with the goal of obtaining high-quality female offspring, thereby accelerating the genetic improvement of our herd. You can observe the mammary system of these cows. Nearly all of them are primiparous, and that is exactly the type of genetic progress we seek in terms of performance and reproduction. This is one of the strategies we use to enhance the genetic assets of our farm. We sell animals to several states, and much of that is only possible because of our ability to replicate the superior genetics present in our herd. Now we are inside the barn. As previously mentioned, this is where we see the cooling pad, the brown panel visible here through which all the air is drawn. It flows across the barn, through the cows, and is extracted by exhaust fans located laterally, creating a constant breeze that contributes to an even better thermal sensation. We are deeply committed to animal welfare. Beyond offering a fresh and well-ventilated environment, we also ensure the comfort of the bedding areas, the quality of the feed, which we'll discuss shortly, the cleanliness and cow handling, and the general conditions of the facilities. You can observe how calm the cows are. We are walking through the barn, and they barely move. This calmness results from proper handling practices. The care we take with the feed bunk, flooring, bedding, ventilation, and lighting creates a pleasant environment, which is precisely what allows us to achieve average yields above 43 liters per cow, even during the most challenging season of the year. Many people often ask me about the story behind all of this. The story begins with a man who is passionate about cows, Mr. Laira Antonio de Souza from the Pazzetti de Souza family. I had the pleasure of starting my career here 31 years ago, at a time when we were producing only a small amount of milk. I vividly remember the first barbecue we held when we hit 10,000 liters of milk in a single day. It is with great pride that I have witnessed this farm's growth. Today, we have 90 direct employees working in milk production, excluding the staff at the dairy plant, who handle packaging and transportation. These 90 people are responsible for all agricultural operations, with the exception of corn planting, which is managed by another team. They also manage forage conservation, pre-dried feed, end siling, and heifer rearing. We do not purchase animals from outside. We are a certified free property, free of brucellosis, tuberculosis, and other contagious diseases. Therefore, we cannot bring animals in from external sources. Most of our workforce lives on the farm or are children of employees who have been here for decades. It is very common to find workers who have been with Colorado for 40 years. I know that's not typical in agribusiness or livestock production, but it is part of what makes this place special. I myself have 31 years at Colorado. When I started, we produced just over 5,000 liters of milk, and day after day, year after year, we have strived to be better than ourselves, never comparing ourselves to others. That, I believe, is Colorado's great differentiator. We pursue excellence by comparing our current results to our own past performance. We know exactly what we need to do to improve, we know where we want to go, and we work to get there through genetic improvement, comfort optimization, and refinement of diets, which you'll hear more about from Nato and Gustavo. All of these are opportunities. Running a dairy operation of this scale with approximately 2,400 cows in lactation, reaching up to 115,000 liters of milk at peak, is only possible through conscious management, committed people, high-quality feed, controlled environments, and above all, a genuine passion for what we do. That passion is what makes the real difference, and you can see it reflected in the behavior and appearance of the animals here in our barns. I believe the most impactful change we made here was improving the quality of the diets, the quality of the feed we offer to the cows, whether it is corn silage or forage grasses. Then, we improved the environmental conditions where the cows are housed. I would say there are 4 key pillars. I already mentioned nutrition, I mentioned ambience, and now I speak about comfort. Finally, genetics has also been transformative for us. We work exclusively with Holstein cattle. That's not to say success isn't possible with other breeds, but in our case, it's Holstein, black and white. And lastly, I would highlight people. These 4 pillars, feeding, environment, genetics, and people management, are what sustain a growing milk production year after year. We invest heavily in our team management. I enjoy working with people. I see opportunity in them. And that vision allowed me to build teams that pursue excellence in everything they do here. So today, whether we are talking about genetic sales or milk production, we have excellent performance indexes, high sales rates, great returns, strong production metrics. This allows us to extract the maximum profitability from every hectare of corn production. Scale efficiency is crucial, and it has helped make Colorado a frequently visited farm. People come to understand how we manage all this. It's not easy. We face challenges. We are aware of our limitations. But we are also very clear on what we need to do to keep growing, even if just a little more. At this stage, we cannot house more animals, so we must either increase productivity per cow or expand the system. As it stands, the system is complete, and that is why we now focus on selling genetics. Today we use quarry sand. It is riverbank sand. We are in a region with abundant sand deposits, so the bedding our cows lie on is fresh, clean sand. We store this sand so that in the future we can recycle it, either for use in heifer bedding or for lactating cows again. Currently, we replenish the bedding 3 times a week, reorganizing and leveling the beds. It is excellent quality sand, and, without a doubt, one of the best bedding options for dairy cows. Many people ask me, why sand? Because for dairy cows, sand is the best bedding option available. Some producers have also been successful using organic material, but since we are located very close to a sand supplier, the cost-benefit ratio and final quality are unmatched. It's simply not comparable to rubber mats or other bedding materials available out there. There's an image here that may seem simple, but it's quite telling. We can clearly observe many cows at the feed bunk, eating, but we also notice a significant number of cows lying comfortably on their bedding. This is essential, because the moment when a cow is truly producing milk is when she is lying down, resting, and ruminating. That moment makes a substantial difference, because it is much more difficult to get a cow to lie down than it is to get her to walk to the feed alley. And for a cow to lie down, two basic things are required. First, she must be well fed, and second, the bedding must be comfortable and cool. One of the great virtues of this system is that the best place inside the barn is precisely the bedding area. This is because, as there is a deflector wall, that upright panel we see, the airflow accelerates directly over the cows, making that the most pleasant microenvironment for the animals to lie down. This is fundamental because, as you know, a cow spends around 12 hours per day lying down. She needs to rest her legs and hooves and to ruminate. Thus, the area where the cow lies down must be clean and dry, attracting her to rest there, with airflow, humidity, and temperature at pleasant levels. It is crucial to observe your animals and understand that any cow not feeding or drinking should be occupying the bedding. That is when milk production actually begins. Not when she is eating, but when she is lying down and ruminating during those 12 hours of rest. That is the true indicator of whether the farm is operating with appropriate management. Speaking now about Colorado Farm's performance metrics, here in Araras under the Shando milk brand, we have an excellent somatic cell count, averaging around 180,000 cells. We have 2,400 cows and apply a robust protocol to minimize antibiotic usage, even during dry-off protocols. Today, more than 70% of the cows that are dried off receive no antibiotics, only internal teat sealants. This is a key factor in maintaining the high quality of our milk, while still keeping somatic cell counts low. Our mastitis rate is below 0.5%, which is an outstanding figure. We work heavily with vaccination protocols and administer treatments parenterally when necessary, such as in environmental mastitis cases that require systemic treatment. We do not use intramammary tubes, avoiding drugs in the teats whenever possible. This approach enables us to deliver a superior milk quality to the market. Regarding reproductive performance, we acknowledge that it is an area in need of improvement. Our pregnancy rate is currently around 23%, which we are working to challenge. We use the Dairy Comp 305 software, an American herd management program. And it is important to mention that the figures I'm quoting are generated using this specific system. In Brazil, there are many different ways to calculate pregnancy rates, so I won't go into the methodology. I'm simply stating that our data comes from Dairy Company. Our conception rate varies between 35 and 45%, depending on the time of year, indicating that we still face challenges during heat stress periods, when fertility tends to drop. A low somatic cell count is vital not only because we are milk producers, and our Shando branded milk reaches the market with higher shelf life and superior quality, but also because mastitis and milk quality are strongly correlated with reproductive efficiency. Our aim is to reduce mastitis rates to further improve reproduction outcomes. Our female birth rate in the herd currently averages around 75%. We aim to raise this to 80% and eventually to 85%. The fewer male calves we produce, the better it is for us, since we are involved in genetic sales, and female offspring are more valuable in our system. Undoubtedly, the largest volume of female calves comes from heifers, the nulliparas, as they are almost exclusively inseminated with sexed semen. In our dairy herd, due to certain reproductive challenges, we are still occasionally required to use conventional semen to achieve pregnancies. Our cows currently average 2.7 to 2.8 lactations per cow, which reflects a solid utilization of their productive cycles. However, we aim to reach an average of 3 lactations per cow, though this has proven difficult, and as anyone in the industry knows, it is not an easy task. Here we are in front of a group of primiparis, and this is a group of A2A2 milk-producing animals. We also have multiparis in this lot, also A2A2. Colorado is committed to this A2A2 milk line, and currently, approximately 70% of our herd consists of A2-A2 genotype animals. Our goal is to reach 100% in order to eliminate the need to segregate production groups. This is a clear market demand. We work with semen from all major genetics companies without exclusive agreements. Although we are assisted by the Alta genetics team, we also purchase semen from other major companies, such as Cemex, ABS, ST, Select Sires, and Lagoa. This diversity contributes to a highly uniform herd genetically prepared for efficient milk production. We do not participate in shows or fairs, as we are a certified free property, and therefore cannot remove animals and bring them back due to biosecurity protocols. Our primary focus here is herd health and milk production, specifically productive lifespan and milk yield. However, we are now beginning to place increased emphasis on milk fat and protein content in response to a growing shift in consumer demand toward cheeses and yogurts. Given this market trend, it makes sense for us to select bulls that transmit higher levels of fat and protein to their offspring. These are traits with strong heritability, and bulls have significant potential to improve these components through genetic transmission. The subject of A2A2 milk is still not widely understood. This is a genetic trait inherent to the animal. It is encoded in her DNA. There is no way to modify milk to become A2A2 after it is produced. A cow must genetically possess this trait to naturally produce milk with A2 beta casein. This milk is associated with improved digestive tolerance, particularly for individuals who often report digestive discomfort or bloating after consuming regular milk. A 2A2 milk may offer a gentler digestion experience, making it more accessible for certain consumers. This refers to the A2 beta casein, a variant of casein protein found in milk. Cows can be classified genetically as A1A1, A1A2, or A2A2. And how is this achieved? Through selective breeding, identifying and breeding animals that carry the A2A2 genotype, which ensures they produce milk exclusively with A2 casein. This determination is made via genomic testing of each animal, allowing us to classify and manage the herd. Specifically for A2 to A2 milk production, this approach particularly benefits individuals who are not lactose intolerant and do not have enzymatic issues, but simply experience digestive discomfort with standard milk, making A2A2 milk a well-tolerated alternative for them. It is important to ensure people do not misunderstand what we are doing. What we do is purchase only A2 to A2 bulls. We have stopped buying any bulls that are not genetically A2A2. When you breed an A1A2 cow with an A2A2 bull, the likelihood of the offspring being A2A2 is significant. About 3 years ago, we made the decision to purchase exclusively A2A2 bulls. One of the ways to increase the proportion of A2A2 animals in the herd is to ensure that no bulls without the A2 gene are introduced into the breeding program. If you breed an A2A2 cow with an A2A2 bull, 100% of the calves will be A2A2. If the cow is A1A2, there is a 50% chance that the offspring will be A2A2, because the bull will always contribute the A2 gene, while the cow may contribute either A1 or A2. However, if the cow is A1A1, then it is impossible for her offspring to be A2A2, because the cow will always contribute the A1 gene, and the resulting calf will only ever be A1A2 at best. We currently have a heifer that is A1A2, and when she is bred in 2 years with an A2A2 bull, her calf has a higher chance of being A2A2, but it is a slow, multi-generational process to achieve full A2A2 status across the herd. Regarding our energy strategy, we are currently in a transitional moment. We do have a solar energy installation at the farm entrance, as you saw earlier, but the majority of the energy used at Colorado still comes from the open market, through standard utility providers like Electro and CPFL. At this point, we are developing a project for a biodigester, but we do not intend to use it to generate electricity. Our goal is to produce biomethane, to be used as fuel in combustion engines. This is because in the state of Sao Paulo, electricity is less expensive compared to other states in Brazil, making large-scale energy generation projects less economically viable for us. For us, the current electricity cost is quite attractive, since we purchase from the open market. The idea with the biodigester is to compress the biogas and sell it as fuel for trucks, fleet vehicles, tractors, or similar uses. However, this would require modifying all the engines, which is a very expensive process. At first, we may adapt 1 or 2 vehicles, but we believe renewable energy is the right direction to pursue. We are currently finalizing the biodigester project, and it promises to bring substantial benefits, especially in terms of sustainability and fertigation systems. This farm has 150 hectares of green area dedicated to forage production, as Gustavo and Nato will explain later. We apply fertigation on these fields, so anything we can do to improve the quality of the slurry is beneficial for the environment, soil health, and natural resources. The use of this slurry or manure, effluent, once fully utilized for energy production, will have a major impact on our sustainability efforts, including carbon footprint reduction and environmental stewardship. Today, Colorado already operates a composting system. All the organic material collected from the barns is scraped and transported to a drying area, where we separate the sand from the manure. The sand is sent to the storage area, mentioned earlier, while the manure is passed through a screening system. The solid fraction is directed to the composting area, where it undergoes a series of preparatory steps to become organic compost. This compost is later applied to corn fields or citrus groves owned by the farm, enriching the soil. Once the compost is dehydrated, the liquid fraction is used in the fertigation system, and approximately 75 to 80% of that water is reused. Thus, the flushing system we use here relies on 75 to 80% reclaimed water. We do not use clean water for flushing operations here. We use reclaimed water as part of our strong environmental commitment. This is a deeply important matter for us. It would be extremely troubling to see clean, potable water being used for floor cleaning in a country or even a planet where water scarcity is a growing concern. This region in particular is already water stressed, and therefore, we aim to ensure that 80% of the water used to clean our barn floors is recycled. The water our animals drink is the same water we drink ourselves. It is also used for cleaning the milking equipment. In this case, yes, drinking water is noble water, properly treated, chlorinated, and not heated. We do not heat the water because we believe that cows prefer it at around 25 degrees Celsius, which is a very comfortable temperature for them to drink. The flushing system we use here is essentially a controlled flooding process. Every time cows are moved to the milking parlor, we remove excess sand and organic matter with the goal of directing these solids into a channel located at the end of the alley. After that, we release a massive wave of water, approximately 15 to 20 centimeters deep, which washes the floor thoroughly, leaving it extremely clean and dry. This is what we refer to as flushing. All of that water flows downward, transporting the organic material to the drying zone. Once collected, the material is separated into solids and sand. The solid fraction is sent to the composting facility, while 80% of the liquid is reused and the remaining 20% is applied through fertigation. What we are seeing here is an antenna. This is an Israeli technology from Afimilk. It is an antenna-based monitoring system that transmits data from the cows. If you look closely, each cow wears a collar around her neck, which identifies the individual animal, records her activity, tracks the time spent at the feed bunk, and the time spent lying down on the bedding. It also detects panting or labored breathing. With this information, we can determine whether the cows are experiencing thermal comfort. For instance, if an entire group of animals is recorded as panting heavily, it indicates that the temperature inside the barn is too high. Using this system, we know what time each cow goes to the milking parlor, where she was milked, and how much milk she produced. We are able to monitor her milk production curve and assess whether it is progressing as expected. At the end of each day, we receive a comprehensive health report showing which cows dropped in milk production, which ones spent an unusual amount of time lying down, and which ones are likely in estrus. In fact, this collar contains an accelerometer, which measures the amount of time the cow is walking. This data helps us cross-reference behavioral patterns to detect estrus, allowing for timely insemination or embryo transfer. What we see here is the application of sand bedding, as we discussed earlier in terms of bedding quality. We can observe the texture, softness, and cleanliness of the sand. It contains no rocks or debris, and it is cool to the touch. This makes a real difference for the cows. When they return from milking, their beds will be well prepared. They will have the opportunity to eat and then lie down on a cool, clean, and dry bed, which encourages resting behavior and has a positive impact on milk production. At this moment, the feed has already been distributed, and it is awaiting the return of the animals from the milking parlor. We just saw the sand bedding being applied, and the tractor is pushing some of the solid material to the side. Soon, we will wash the area using the flushing system. and then the cows will be brought back from milking so that they can access the fresh bedding and feed. We are now at the calf facility. At Colorado, we work with individual hutches placed directly on the ground, using layered wood shavings bedding. We have 4 separate calf barns, which were adapted from existing structures. This particular space used to be a milking parlor, but it is now a very comfortable environment, thanks to the thermal insulation of the roofing. We manage an average of approximately 2,800 heifer calves born per year, with occasional seasonal peaks depending on calving concentration. Newborn calves spend their first day in the maternity area, where they receive colostrum. Our goal is to administer colostrum within the first 2 hours of life, with a strong emphasis on the first hour. We aim to deliver a volume corresponding to 10% of the calf's body weight in colostrum. We measure colostrum quality using a Brix refractometer, targeting values above 25, and generally provide approximately 4 liters, or 4 kilograms, in this first feeding. Ideally, we aim to raise heifer calves that exhibit steady weight gain, like the one beside me. To support that growth, we offer 7 liters of enriched milk at 14% total solids. Initially, we start with 6 liters per day, and within 2 to 3 days, once the calf is capable of ingesting the full volume, we increase the intake to 7 liters, served via bucket feeding. This feeding level is maintained until approximately 55 days of age. After that, we implement a step-down weaning protocol, gradually reducing the milk volume from 7 to 5 liters, then to 3 liters, and finally transitioning to 1 daily feeding. By around 80 days of age, the calf should be consuming little to no milk, and instead ingesting approximately 1.2 kilograms of calf starter concentrate. We offer starter concentrate from the first day of life, and it remains available ad libitum in the feeding bucket, along with clean, fresh water, which is treated as a top priority. Water quality is critical. It must always be clean, dry, and safe. The starter concentrate is formulated in-house, based on a customized dietary mix developed by our technical team. Using this protocol, we achieve average weight gains between 900 and 950 grams per day, from birth to weaning, which occurs around 80 days of age. After weaning, the heifers enter the post-weaning phase, during which they are fed only concentrate and hay for approximately 20 days, before being gradually introduced to fermented forages, including corn silage and tropical grasses. This represents a portion of our daily calf rearing routine. We are currently evaluating a potential transition to bottle feeding, although, for the time being, Colorado still utilizes bucket feeding. During this early development phase, up to approximately 90 days of age, we perform all essential tasks: weaning, weighing, vaccination schedules, and dehorning, with close monitoring of each calf's development and health status. Here we are observing the recently weaned heifers, which allows us to better understand their post-weaning diet. As mentioned earlier, this phase is based on hay and concentrate. These particular calves arrived here 2 days ago. They are newly weaned, and the objective at this stage is to prevent any loss of body weight. To achieve this, we keep them in enclosed group pens. They have access to clean water and the same concentrate they were previously fed, but now with slightly higher fiber content to support rumen health. The animals are grouped in batches of 9, and they remain on this diet for 20 days. After that, we begin transitioning them to pasture paddocks, allowing them to be exposed to natural conditions, including tick contact, which is part of the adaptation process. As the calves develop, the group sizes are increased from 9 to 18, and then from 18 to 35 animals per group. At this stage, the calves begin to receive fermented forages, such as corn, silage, and pre-dried forages, including oat and barley, which are also part of the nutritionist's formulated diets. This diet is significantly different from the earlier phases. It is more moist, contains fermented ingredients, and differs substantially from the drier, more fibrous starter diet used during the pre-weaning phase. In this way, we gradually develop the rumen of our young animals. The heifers in this group are currently around 120 days old, or slightly older, and they are progressively moved into new groups as they grow. All vaccinations are administered during this stage. This is how Colorado implements a comprehensive system that completes the entire pre-adult development cycle. For us, a heifer is considered to exit the calf rearing phase once she reaches approximately 11 to 12 months of age. At that point, she remains on the farm but is transferred to a different management area, where we begin to prepare her for entry into the reproductive program. Reproductive protocols begin at approximately 13 months of age, when the heifer reaches around 380 kilograms, more or less. This marks the beginning of a new production cycle. The young calf we saw earlier will now become pregnant, and she will be managed here on the farm in a dedicated area for heifer rearing, which is separate from the calf rearing unit. This current area is a calf facility for 200 heifers, and just ahead is the compost barn, which we built about 5 years ago, with capacity for 500 animals. We also apply the flushing system in that area to ensure proper hygiene and cleanliness. Here we see the bedding system, and this bedding is made using the material previously used in the calf hutches. The overlaid bedding from the young heifers is repurposed and brought here to serve as the substrate for the compost barn. The difference is that our compost barn is open, and the heifers have direct access to paddocks, where they are exposed to ticks. This is a deliberate part of Colorado's strategy to prepare animals for field conditions, since we sell genetics. And it is essential that animals raised in Brazil are adapted to tick challenges. The heifers remain in this area for approximately 3 additional months, after which they enter the reproductive phase, around the time they are approaching 11 months of age. This point also raises an interesting reflection on animal welfare. Many people often comment, "Oh, the animals are raised in confinement." But take a look at what's happening here. It's not hot, it's not raining, there's no intense sunlight, and the paddock gate is wide open. As you can see in the footage, not a single animal is out in the paddock. They're all inside. Why is that? Because here, near the fans, with access to water and feed, the environment is far more comfortable than the paddock. This example helps to illustrate a fundamental concept of animal welfare. The presence of bedding or open space does not necessarily determine comfort. Quite the opposite. When given the freedom to choose, the animals still prefer staying inside. This contextualizes for those watching the video the importance of creating an environment that meets the animal's core needs: clean air, clean water, high-quality feed, and ventilation. That is the essence. This setup clearly demonstrates true animal welfare, which is not about forcing animals to go outside, but rather ensuring they have freedom of choice. The fact that they have open access to the paddocks and still choose to remain in a controlled environment speaks volumes. And the same behavior is observed in the lactating cows as well.
My name is Nato Carvalho, and I am the livestock manager here at Colorado Farm. We are currently in the lactating cow production area, and I'd like to share a bit about our current feeding program. Today we work with 3 different diets: a high production diet designed for herds averaging around 52 kilograms of milk per cow per day, a mid-production diet for groups producing approximately 42 to 45 kilograms of milk, and a postpartum diet. All of these diets are composed of corn silage, pre-dried Tifton grass, wet barley from brewery byproducts, whole cottonseed, citrus pulp, ground corn, soybean meal, and high bypass protein soybean meal, referred to here as CPs. We also include rumen inert fat, macro and micro minerals, vitamins, and several nutritional additives. These ingredients collectively constitute the dietary base for our lactating animals. The key distinction lies in the postpartum diet, where we incorporate specific feed additives, particularly choline and methionine. Among all additives, these are perhaps the most differentiated in terms of their targeted use during this phase. The animals are grouped not only by milk production level, but also by parity, meaning primiparous and multiparous are managed separately. Herd management is carried out on an almost weekly basis, as we are currently experiencing a high volume of calvings. One of our present challenges is overcrowding, which compels us to be not necessarily more efficient, but certainly more agile in our decision-making regarding herd management. We generally consider it undesirable to have to move animals frequently. The less movement, the better. However, current conditions demand greater responsiveness. We are aware that there is a degree of social stress and adaptation when animals are moved from one group to another. However, within the reality of the farm, there are times of the year when we face cases of hemorrhagic jejunal syndrome, and this remains a condition for which we have yet to determine whether it is a cause or a consequence of other factors. When we examine manure consistency, rumen activity, and even milk fat levels, the animals appear to be healthy, at least according to nutritional indicators, which suggest that the nutrient supply is adequate. One possible hypothesis is that overcrowding is a contributing factor. We are currently facing overstocking levels of up to 30%, which undoubtedly alters animal behavior, including their access to the feed bunk. This leads animals to rush their intake whenever they have the opportunity to feed, and as a result, it can sharply reduce ruminal pH, which may in turn be linked to the condition. Another possible contributing factor is the presence of mold or heating in silage. At times we are required to produce silage in bunker silos, and even though we try to manage it as effectively as possible, it is nearly impossible to be 100% efficient in preventing issues during silage transition phases. Feed refusal is something that concerns me here. One thing we detected was that during a specific period at night, we were pushing up the feed, but by morning the feed was found to be far from the feed bunk. This suggests that intake is not necessarily low, but rather that the cows did not have proper access to the feed. We have since adjusted this practice, and we will now complete the evaluation at the end of March to determine whether this correction has resolved the issue. Still, this is a point that I find concerning. Displaced abomasum is generally well controlled here, with an incidence of less than 1%. When it does occur, it is often closely associated with stocking density, which continues to be one of our greatest challenges. Displacement is not always linked to diet. Factors such as grouping strategy and feed bunk space availability may also play a causative role in such occurrences. From a broader herd health perspective, hoof care is currently an area where we face some management difficulties, primarily due to insufficient labor. Often we are required to reassign staff from one department to another, which causes delays in preventive hoof trimming. We are currently reorganizing our workforce to address this issue and optimize hoof trimming schedules. When I first arrived here, this was one of the critical areas I focused on, especially considering the overcrowding issue. One of the strategies I implemented was to increase feed delivery frequency. We used to feed the high-producing groups 3 times per day, and today we feed them 6 times per day, improving intake dynamics and performance under high-density conditions. Here, in addition to the use of the feed mixer wagon, we also rely on a bobcat, which has the specific function of pushing up the feed along the feed bunk. Our protocol is that approximately 30 to 40 minutes after the diet has been distributed, the bobcat operator must return and push the feed closer to the cows. After that, feed is pushed every hour, or sooner, if the operator visually observes that the feed has shifted out of reach. Whenever we formulate a new diet, we begin with a nutritional analysis of the forages. As for the concentrates, such as corn and soybean meal, we typically use standardized values, so those ingredients are sampled less frequently. Because we have a large herd and high silage intake, we regularly analyze both the corn silage and the pre-dried Tifton grass. In the case of the Tifton, we run analyses every 15 days since its inclusion rate in the total mixed ration is relatively low. For this reason, we believe that variations in its composition are unlikely to cause significant nutritional imbalances. As for corn silage, we make a point of analyzing it once a week since it tends to show greater variability. What we generally monitor includes starch content, neutral detergent fiber, NDF, fiber digestibility, and dry matter, which we measure routinely here on the farm. We also submit samples to an external laboratory where we request a full nutritional profile. One particular parameter I always like to evaluate is indigestible NDF at 240 hours, because it helps me assess the potential limitation of digestible NDF intake, which typically ranges from 0.3 to 0.4% of body weight. I use this information to determine whether the diet is properly balanced and will not limit voluntary intake. This is something I monitor closely. Another important point is that many people focus on starch content, but in my opinion, starch digestibility is even more important than the absolute starch concentration. If I am working with a highly degradable starch, I also need to carefully monitor physically effective NDF, digestible NDF, and effective NDF, as all of these are directly linked to rumen health. For example, when feeding high moisture corn, I have to balance it with a specific level of fermentable starch. For high-producing cows, I work with a maximum of 19% fermentable starch. For mid to low-producing groups, I can work with levels around 16 to 15%, always prioritizing safety. That 19% is my personal upper limit. Another factor that limits my ability to increase fermentable starch is stocking density. This presents a challenge from both a management standpoint and a health risk perspective, especially in terms of preventing subacute ruminal acidosis. Because of that, I tend to be more conservative when it comes to starch levels. Currently, the total starch content of the diet is approximately 27%, which is the maximum I work with here. I know that some operations reach as high as 30%, but for reasons of prudence and animal safety, I do not push to that level. Once again, I always prioritize fermentable starch over total starch content, as I believe it is the more relevant parameter.
What are the consequences of exceeding the recommended starch levels?
The consequence is excessive fermentation, leading to a drop in ruminal pH and triggering problems such as acidosis. That results in milk fat depression and reduced ruminal activity. In some cases, it may also contribute to issues like hoof problems, although I believe those are more multifactorial and not caused exclusively by acidosis. In my opinion, for a cow to develop laminitis, she would need to remain in chronic acidosis for an extended period. In the short term, the most immediate signs are milk fat depression and diarrhea, which are my primary concerns when working with higher starch levels. It's also worth noting that this farm operates its own dairy processing plant, meaning we have a vertically integrated system, and one of our products is cream. Therefore, maintaining high milk solids, especially fat content, is essential. That's why I am particularly cautious when it comes to managing starch levels in the diet. Fecal scoring, in my opinion, is a crucial diagnostic tool for evaluating the effectiveness of the diet. I also consider temporal activity and rumination behavior to be essential indicators. Ideally, we want at least 50% of the cows ruminating within 1 to 2 hours after feeding. These are parameters we monitor almost daily. Another critical factor is particle size, both for corn silage and pre-dried forages, which we classify as long fiber. Rumination activity is directly influenced by the physical structure of the fiber, and particle length is what effectively triggers rumination. We use the Penn State particle separator as a practical tool for evaluating forage particle size. Our target distribution is to have between 2 and 5% of the material retained on the top screen, more than 60% on the middle screen, and around 50% or less on the bottom screen, specifically when analyzing silage particle length. One of the main factors that influences our chop length decisions is the dry matter content of the forage at the time of harvest. When the forage is drier, it becomes more difficult to achieve proper compaction, and one of the strategies we adopt to improve that condition is to reduce the particle size. As an example, we once had a harvest that went past the optimal point, and we ended up chopping at 11 millimeters. Here at Colorado, we are fortunate to have the opportunity to work with a second fiber source, which helps mitigate the effects of that. However, in operations that rely exclusively on corn silage, I consider it somewhat risky, particularly regarding the risk of ruminal acidosis, as we discussed earlier. This is because without sufficient fiber structure, there is no proper ruminal mat formation, which is essential to slow down the degradation rate of corn and other grains. Without that buffering effect, the particles tend to sink to the bottom of the rumen, where fermentation is more intense, thereby increasing the risk of acidosis. Therefore, it is essential to manage this carefully. Ideally, I believe the particle size of corn silage should be around 2.5 centimeters, which can be achieved with a forage harvester setting of 19 millimeters, provided the dry matter content is within the optimal range of 35% to 36%. For long fiber sources, such as pre-dried Tifton grass, we aim for particle sizes between 5 and 6 centimeters.
My name is Gustavo, and I am the nutrition coordinator at Colorado Farm. We are currently in the grass silage production area, specifically working with pre-dried forages, cultivated over approximately 150 hectares, including both Tifton and Coast Cross varieties. The process works as follows. We mow the forage in the field, and the material is left for about 2 hours, using an implement that spreads it across the ground to accelerate drying. After this period, we use a windrower to form windrows, and the forage is then harvested and chopped. Our goal is to work with a dry matter content between 38 and 42%. Regarding chop length, we aim for approximately 16 to 18 millimeters, and on the particle size separator, we target the following distribution: around 20% on the top sieve, about 19 to 8% on the intermediate sieve, approximately 60% on the next level, and 20 to 30% on the bottom sieve. We began harvesting in mid-January, and since then, we've had several intervals due to weather conditions. This week happens to be one of those intervals, so it's a strategic opportunity for us to advance forage harvesting, as the summer crop arrives very close to the main harvest window. We expect to complete this cycle by around April 15th, after which we will begin planning for the second crop harvest. This is the truck that brought in the forage and is currently unloading into the silo. Today, we are working with a bunker silo, surface silo, and ideally, for every 1 meter of height, we should maintain 4 to 5 meters of width. Although this type of forage presents some challenges, as it tends to have a higher dry matter content and more structural fiber than corn silage, we focus our efforts on maximizing compaction. We use a high-quality plastic cover, which is essential to achieve good fermentation and ensure optimal nutritional value when the material is later fed to the animals. We are currently in the maternity area, specifically the prepartum sector, where we work with a fully anionic diet protocol, 100%, primarily due to management efficiency and safety. At the moment, we offer 2 feedings per day, and we have 3 separate groups within this sector: a group of dry cows, this group of heifers, and further ahead, a group of animals close to calving. Next to the heifer group, we have the calving pens. As mentioned, we maintain a fully anionic diet in this entire sector, including the pre-fresh groups, mainly for logistical practicality. These 2 daily feedings are carefully managed. The staff in this sector operate in 3 shifts, remaining on-site throughout the day. They are also responsible for pushing up the feed, relieving the main nutrition team from this task. By keeping the feed close to the animals, they stimulate intake, which is critical in this challenging phase, especially in the cross-ventilation barn. This daily stimulus helps optimize dry matter intake, which is a key objective during the transition period. We are currently in the feed storage area, a warehouse where we store several ingredients that are consumed in high daily volumes. The goal here is to ensure proper storage conditions in order to preserve feed quality and prevent nutrient losses. One of the main ingredients stored here is whole cottonseed, which we are currently using at a rate of nearly 6 metric tons per day. Toward the back, we have citrus pulp, for which we started stockpiling last year, and we are now approaching the end of that reserve. Current consumption of citrus pulp is around 7 metric tons per day. We also use this shed to store hay bales. Some of the hay is produced on the farm, and the rest is purchased externally. We also store soybean hulls, which are used in heifer diets, and we keep some equipment and implements here in this feed management area. This is our main feed storage facility, and our daily hay usage is approximately 500 kilograms. Each bale weighs around 200 kilograms, and the hay is typically 90% dry matter. We include this material in some grower diets and also in the postpartum diets. We are now in the heifer rearing sector, where animals are being prepared for reproduction, including some that have already been inseminated. Feeding in this sector is done twice daily, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Since it is not feasible to weigh feed refusals here due to logistical limitations, we manage feed adjustments by assessing the feed bunk score early in the morning. In this sector, we aim for approximately 3% refusals, which corresponds to a feed bunk score between 2 and 3 on a 0 to 5 scale. Each morning we evaluate the feed bunk condition, and the quantity of feed delivered to the animals is adjusted based on this assessment. We are currently in the central feeding hub of the farm. As we mentioned earlier, this area is connected to the upper storage shed, as well as to the forage silage areas, which include corn silage, sorghum silage, and grass silage. Here, we also have a mineral storage shed and 4 grain silos, which are currently deactivated. We are planning to reactivate them, possibly to be used for heifer feed storage. We have a 30 cubic meter mixer wagon used for feeding the lactating cows, and behind it, a 19 cubic meter self-propelled mixer used for maternity diets. The self-propelled mixer is the main unit we use to prepare and deliver feed in that area. At the center of this feeding sector, we also have a front loader, which is responsible for loading all ingredients into the feed mixers. As we move toward the open bay area, we find different commodity bays. The first bay is stocked with chopped hay, coming from the upper hay shed we visited earlier. We also have space allocated for barley, 2 open bays for whole cotton seed, 1 for citrus pulp, and 1 for ground corn, which we keep available in case of urgent supplementation needs. We will discuss the ground corn silo in more detail shortly. In front of us, we have 4 soybean meal silos. The first silo contains bypass soybean meal, and each silo has a storage capacity of 52 metric tons. So, the first silo holds bypass soybean meal, while the other 3 silos are filled with regular soybean meal. Also located in this area is the heifer feeding mixer wagon, which had been out of use and stored. We are currently using an 18 cubic meter unit as a temporary replacement for the 22 cubic meter mixer, which is undergoing maintenance. Now we are moving toward the corn grinding sector of the farm. This is the ground corn production area, where we have 2 large grain silos, each with a capacity of 1,500 metric tons. From those large silos, the grain is transferred to a smaller silo, with a capacity of 21 tons, which serves as the pre-grinding reservoir. From there, the grain is fed into a 50 horsepower mill, where it is ground into fuba and stored in a 32-ton silo. Currently, the farm's daily consumption of ground corn is around 16 to 17 metric tons. The daily feeding routine for the lactating cows begins at 4:30 a.m. At this time, the first feeding is delivered, and the entire sequence follows a well-defined schedule. Currently, we work with 3 different diets in the lactation barn: a high production diet, the diets for groups 4 and 5, and the postpartum diet. The sequence is organized as follows. We begin with a mixer load for the postpartum group, followed by a load of the diet for groups 1, 2, and 3, which is delivered first to barns 1 and 3. Then, another load of the diet for groups 1, 2, and 3 is delivered to barn 2, followed by 1 load for groups 4 and 5, and then another for groups 1, 2, and 3. To finish the morning feeding, we deliver 1 more load for groups 4 and 5. In our nutrition team group chat, once the person in charge of collecting feed refusals sends the maternity feed data, the morning feeder immediately proceeds to prepare the maternity diet, which refers to the prepartum group. Sometimes this feeding is done before the second to last or last load of the morning. In the afternoon, the sequence begins again with the postpartum group, followed by a load for groups 1, 2, and 3, then another for groups 3 and 4, and right after that, another maternity feeding. At night, 2 loads are delivered for groups 1, 2, and 3, one at the start of the night shift, and the second as the last load of the night. Between these 2 feedings, 1 additional load is prepared and delivered. As I always say, In order to deliver this level of performance, we must rely on a well-trained, motivated team who understands what they are doing and remains focused on results. We use an application that monitors the margin of error for each ingredient, both during ingredient loading and feed delivery to the animals. In most dairy operations, teams strive to maintain a margin of error of around 2%, which is already considered very good. But I always say I have the best team in the world, because here we consistently operate with an accuracy of around 99.7% to 99.8%. And that level of precision is only possible thanks to the people, motivated individuals, who are committed to excellence on a daily basis. Speaking a bit about feed refusal management, here is how we handle it on the farm. Refusals are collected from within the lactation barn, as well as from the maternity area and calf barn 2, which we will visit shortly. All of this leftover feed is reused in a structured way. Once collection begins, the material is sent to dry cow lots 9 and 10, located outside the main barn. Refusals are also distributed to heifer lot 21 and to lot 18, which contains animals that transition from calf barn 2 to the heifer rearing phase following weaning. Any remaining refusals, that is, what is left after reuse, are stored in the heifer sorghum silo, so that the employee in charge of heifer feeding can use them for animals in the reproductive preparation phase. Here in the lactation sector, we typically operate with around 5% feed refusal. In the transition groups, including both postpartum and prepartum animals, we allow for a slightly higher refusal rate of 8% to 10% to support optimal intake and physiological adaptation during this critical period.
My name is Andre, and I am the coordinator of the dairy plant at Colorado Farm. Now we are entering the processing facility of Colorado Farm. This is our pasteurization sector, where the raw milk storage tanks are located. We have a total of 7 tanks, 5 tanks with a capacity of 13,500 liters, and 2 tanks of 30,000 liters. In addition, there is an external silo dedicated to spot milk with a capacity of 70,000 liters. This is where we house the pasteurizer, homogenizer, and cream separator. Currently, we are processing approximately 70,000 liters of milk per hour through the pasteurization line. We also have 4 pasteurized milk storage tanks, each with a capacity of 15,000 liters. Pasteurization is what guarantees the quality and shelf life of our milk. It allows the product to remain stable during its time on the market. The process consists of a rapid temperature increase, followed by a rapid cooling, heating the milk to 75 degrees Celsius, then immediately reducing it to 3 degrees Celsius. This is performed in a single cycle, and the entire process takes only a few seconds as the milk passes continuously through the pasteurizer. Here we are in the bottling room. This is our 1-liter milk bottling line, where we are currently filling approximately 50,000 to 60,000 liters of milk per day into bottles. In addition to bottles, we also package milk in plastic pouches and bags. This area also houses the cream filling station, where we process and package milk cream obtained by extracting the fat from whole milk. Cheese production, however, is not done here. This is the bottle orientation room, where the bottling process begins. The bottles arrive in bundles, and the operators, in this case, the female staff, load them into the hopper, from where they move into the automatic orienter, which positions the bottles correctly. Next, they pass through the date printer and then through the ionized air system before reaching the milk filling station. This is the starting point of the entire bottling process. The date coder operator stays here, monitoring for any deformed bottles and ensuring that the printed dates are correct and legible. Now we're in another room. This is where our packaging and bundling takes place. This is the shrink wrapper, where the filled bottles are grouped into packs, which are then sent to the final processing stage, palletization. This is the last step of the dairy plant's production process. The bundled packs are organized into layers on pallets, following a predefined arrangement. Once the pallet is complete, it is transferred directly to the cold storage chamber. From there, the products are loaded onto trucks for distribution. This is our antechamber, where we perform vehicle loading operations. Here, we have our cold storage chambers. This one is Cold Room 1, and further ahead, we have Cold Room 2. The second chamber is slightly larger and is designed to eventually hold up to 90 pallets. Currently, we store approximately 30 to 40 pallets in this space. This is where we keep all products from our group and where we perform daily separation tasks. Every morning, we carry out order picking for different distribution regions, and from here, we dispatch shipments accordingly.